So, Burger, what were they called, the gang?
The Burger Bar Boys.
How did they get that name?
Um, it was a burger bar where they used to meet, I think, just in Birmingham. And they had a rival gang, the Johnson crew, famous rivals. And that rivalry has meant in some all sorts of murders. A very high profile double murder of two women,
Bloody hell.
Charmaine Harris and Letitia Shakespeare, who were machine gunned in the street.
What was the reason that they did that?
They thought they were someone else, I think. It was just someone. They thought they were someone connected with the Johnson crew and needed murdering.
What were the roots of this gang?
Well, some of them are second generation, or were second generation dealers. So that they've been brought up into the lifestyle in a family sense, which is a terrifying dynamic of the way that the drug war is going to play out. We're in the third generation now, as we call it in drug wars. What's going to happen with the fourth? You've got 10,000 children being exploited by drug gangs to deal drugs. How are they going to be influenced as they grow up? It's a terrifying prospect. So, I mean, it was quite a large gang. One of them, I can't remember what I call him in the book, but I'll call him Junior. He was the person who sourced the gun for that double murder, and he was in the car, and he was the only one who didn't get prosecuted. 4 of them did. And he was the guy who was leading the gang of 6 Burger Bar Boys who had taken over the supply in Northampton. So he was implicated in 7 different murders in Birmingham, and he was seen as Burger Bar Boys enforcer type character. And he'd taken over Northampton. And the way that they'd taken over Northampton is a classic story. Northampton police had some success against their local dealers, and the big gang from the big city stepped in and took over. The gap in the marketplace. It's just the way business works, isn't it? Richard Branson calls disruption good for business. And, where does that play out more than the drug markets? So they took over Northampton, and that's when I got called in. Because they said, well, Woodsy, we need you to do this one. Because I'd given up undercover work at this point because I found Cammy and all that really too distressing. But they persuaded me to do it. And they said, look, Woodsy, you need to do this because these are even more vicious than the last lot. They're using rape as punishment and reputation building. If you've got a sister or girlfriend and you've got a drug debt, then they're going to get raped. Or there were maimings. They were just unbound brutality. It really was. So, and in fact, one of the days when I had got to know them, that there was, I remember being briefed in the morning that there was a rape had happened, a gang rape, in the car that I'd been getting into. So that morning, if I did get into the same car and I came out again, then I may well become part of the crime scene. So we had to have a strategy for then getting my clothes all bagged up, just in case, because if she reported it, then they wanted to have some chance of some evidence. But of course, she didn't report it. Who goes up against the Burger Bar Boys? So, so that's the kind of, that was the backdrop to what their behaviour was as we were working. But I had to, because they weren't necessarily hands-on, they were mostly wholesale for the town, and there were 6 of them running the business. I had to work really hard to get an introduction to them directly. So what I did is I picked on 2 people who were a couple, a man and a woman. They were both problematic heroin users, both supported each other, quite a good couple. She was really good at selling the big issue. She'd be there from 8 o'clock every morning outside the Marks and Spencers in Northampton. And he was quite a good shoplifter, which is quite weird because he walked with a crutch. He had chronic pain and an injury in his leg. But they supported each other. They had set up a dealing, but they were unaffiliated, so they got grassed up. So in other words, the Burgers used a police informant to shut them down, to get rid of the competition. They were lucky that that's the way they tackled it, I suppose. So they were on bail at the time. So I picked on them because they were well connected. And so I got them to introduce me to all the stolen property handlers, to anyone who would take spirits. anyone who would take electronics, anyone who would take baby clothes. Baby clothes was massive. But I suppose they grow up so fast, don't they? So there's always a demand for baby clothes and child's clothes. So I was like shoplifting or pretending to shoplift that and selling them stuff and then winning them over by, if I had any spare property left, like if I'd sold a load of DVDs and I had some spare, I'd just give them to them as a present. And I really got on with them really well. They were really nice people. But I was always moaning, saying, I can only get these crappy 10 bags off this guy or this guy. I could do with doing some weights and maybe setting myself up as, taking some weights out of the city and selling where it's safe to do it. So eventually they said, yeah, all right, we'll introduce you to the Brummies, because they were well connected with them. Despite, well, I don't think they realised that the Brummies had got rid of them in the way that they had. But they introduced me, and it was a really weird experience being taken to their sort of headquarters, and they held court in the local snooker club in the centre of town. And it was very, very odd, because he's walking there alongside me with the walking stick, and we're going towards it, and he's made me learn a cover story, because I'd only known him a few weeks. And he says, no, if I'm introducing you, we've known each other for years. So we need to say where we've known each other from, what we've done together, who else we know. And he's making me learn all these names and places. And I'm thinking, God's sake, let me just remember my own cover story. What are you trying to do to me? Turning me schizophrenic or something. So that was a bit uncomfortable. And then we went into the snooker club and we were directed into the gents' toilets straight away. And the door burst open and this hooded figure came in, went into the cubicle, stood in the toilet and looked over the cubicle and said, what's this? And the door burst open again and these 4 hooded figures came in and they started walking around me. And as they're walking around me, then they occasionally headbutt me, like on the side of the ear. I don't know if you've ever been battered on the side of the ear, but it really hurts. And it's quite surprising too. And so I'd be headbutted one way and I'd be pushed another and butted next. And while this is going on, he's asking me questions and then he's asking him questions. And then he's rephrasing the questions and testing me a little bit. And I knew the reputation of these people, and I knew they would be likely to just casually leave me in a mess. And I just became quite convinced I wasn't leaving that in one piece. I thought, I'm going to have a really serious beating here, because it's what they do. And the sort of the feeling of impending violence was almost tangible. It was really tangible in the air.
Are you completely at risk in these situations whereby you've got no backup monitoring the situation? For example, if I don't come out in 10 minutes, you guys raid this snooker hall, or you haven't got a panic button or any way to...
No, I think actually for that operation, I actually think I had a smartphone, which was an open mic. But I would never be comfortable with backup being close to me, because that, for my mind, makes me more at risk. I can account for my own actions, but I can't account for the actions of somebody else. So no, I generally was just on my own.
So anything can happen.
So anything can happen, yeah. And even if I did have the smartphone on, because a lot of the time it didn't work, even if I just had a smartphone on, and anything's going to happen before any backups come in anyway. So it makes no difference. So I'd rather not have anyone nearby to risk me. So yeah, I thought I was going to get a beating. And all of a sudden it just stopped, because he said, all right then, what do you want? And in almost choreographed fashion, as soon as he said, what do you want? They just went out in single file. And I said, I'll have 1-on-1, please. Which are 0.4 of heroin, 0.4 of crack, £20 each. Gave him my £40 and said, can I have your number? I put my number in a phone and that was it. I was into them then. That was the most difficult moment, just to get that introduction, because once I'd got that number, then all 6 of them operated from that. And I say they were wholesale because they were running all the runners and other people in the town, but they were also hands-on as well, who were doing both sides. They were busy people making a lot of money, and they were very good at making it as well. But they were pretty brutal.
Do you have stories of their brutality other than what you described with the rapes?
There was one day I'd started wearing a camera to get evidence of them. And I think I've been wearing a camera, I think, for at least a week. But this one day when I finished seeing them, and I think one of them said, why why we always end up meeting you here? So I thought, there's a little bit of suspicion here. There's something going on. So the next morning I thought, do I wear the camera? Do I not? And I thought, no, I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to wear it today. Anyway, when I met, expecting to meet one of them, I met 5 of them. And then I think 4 of them put me in this big vehicle and drove me. It wasn't a massive distance, but drove me to the edge of the racecourse, which is a park in the centre of Northampton. And there's a bit where there's a path there's some roads which sort of lead onto it. And they took me up to one of those dead end roads and took me to the edge of the park amongst the trees. One of them lifted his shirt up and showed me a gun tucked into his trouser top. It was tracky top. And he says, right, straight, white boy. Come on, you're 5'0". Again, I'm thinking, you're definitely not old enough to have seen why 5'0". You're a child, for fuck's sake. But he says, you're 5'0", you heat. You know, we know you are. Where have you come from? Where have you come from? And they made me strip naked in the day at the edge of the racecourse park in Northampton. And I was very, very happy I'd not worn that camera that day. Very, very happy indeed. Because I was almost smiling like, this is fucking terrifying, but it could be a lot worse.
Do you think they would have shot you?
Most of the gangsters and people I've met have had an exaggerated reputation and have some common sense and a sense of how they could make things worse. These guys, I think, had no idea. I think they would definitely have shot me. I think they would have not thought about the long-term circumstances. I thought they would have been quite sure they could get away with it. So yeah, I think I was genuinely at risk.